Jay. Today we're going to start 2.2, solving equations algebraically. The first problem we're going to look at is solving x squared minus 2x minus 3 equals 0. From Algebra 1, we learned there's a bunch of different ways to solve this problem. What might be the easiest way? Trying to factor. Trying to factor can be the fastest way. Can be. When I factor, what's the only way I can get an x squared? X times x. That's why I threw the two x's. And that's usually when I try to factor if there's just an x. Now I look at the 3. What's the only way I can multiply and get a negative 3? A 1 and a 3. But I know 1 has to be positive, 1 has to be negative. The negative has to be the 3 because of the negative 2. So I have x plus 1 equals x minus 3. We're trying to solve it equal to 0. If one of these is 0, the whole thing is 0. So what plus 1 is equal to 0? Negative 1. What minus 3 is 0? 3. My zeros are negative 1 and positive 3. That's one way. Okay, let's try a different method. Another way. Synthetic division, that's when you try to do a binomial into a polynomial. That's when you're doing division. Quadratic formula sound familiar? Quadratic formula. X equals negative b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Yes, it's long, but this method is just plug in, plug in, plug in, do the math. Usually the easiest methods are going to take the longest way. Now I need to know a, b, and c. What's a? 1. Where do you get 1 from? It's what's in front. It's the coefficient of the x squared. What about my b? Negative 2. You just bring the sign along, and c is negative 3. So I have negative 2, positive 2, plus or minus the square root, negative 2 squared, minus 4 times a times c, all over 2 times a. I have 2 plus or minus. What's 2 squared? 4. Negative 4 times 1 times negative 3. Positive 12. 4 plus 12 is 16. All over 2. What's the square root of 16? 4. So I have 2 plus 4, or 2 plus or minus 4. Now I can actually solve this one. What's 2 plus 4? 6. 6 divided by 2 is 3. What's 2 minus 4? 2 minus 4 is negative 2. Divided by 2 is negative 1. So my answer is 3 negative 1. Still the same exact answer, just a lot more work. And let's try another method. Can't group by factoring only works if there's 4 terms though. That's good. Complete the square. That's the other one. Completing the square is the one everyone usually avoided. When I try to complete the square, the first thing I do is I need to move this to the other side. X squared minus 2x equals 3. I need to find out what will complete the square. So, anyone remember how to complete the square? Okay, that's fine. I take the b, negative 2, divided by 2, and square it. What's negative 2 divided by 2? negative 1 and square it, and I get 1. So I do plus 1 here, plus 1 here. You have to cut it in half. You're trying to make it a perfect square. When I factor this one, I have x minus 1 squared. If I take x minus 1 times x minus 1, that will give me x squared minus 2x plus 1. And 3 plus 1 is 4. How do I get rid of a square? I take the square root, I take the square root. So I have x minus 1 equals plus or minus the square root of 2. Add over my 1. X equals 1 plus or minus 2. What's 1 plus 2? 3. And 1 minus 2 is negative 1. 3 ways got me the same exact answer. Are all of these familiar? I want you to try this one by any means necessary. 3x squared minus x equals negative 10. All right, I can try it a bunch of different ways. I'm going to try it the one no one likes first. I'm going to complete the square. In order to complete the square, I have one problem. I have to have x squared. Divide by 3, divide by 3, divide by 3. I have to divide everything by 3 because it has to be x squared out front. X squared minus 1/3 x equals negative 10/3. All right, I'm going to take and look at the negative 1/3. I'm going to cut it in half and square it. So I have negative 1/6 squared, which is 1/36.
Why did you cut half?
Because I need to divide by 2, which is the same thing as cutting it in half. So I have x minus 1/6 squared. I'm cutting out that little step in between. Equals negative 10/3 plus 1/36. All right, fine. Negative 10, question mark, that's a good one. Negative 10 divided by 3 plus 1/36. I have x minus 1/6 squared equals negative 119/36. Ding, ding, ding. Red light goes off. Why? Why? I have to take the square root, and you can't take the square root of a negative number. What does no solution mean, though? Nope. Okay, if we're talking about this graph right here, if I were to put this in the calculator, what's it going to look like? It's not a straight line. It's not a horizontal line. It can be. Because of the squared, it has to be a problem. Square tells... It's a parabola that doesn't hit the x-axis. Now I got to do plus 10. Why don't I see it? It's plus 10, so it's all the way up there. So I'll just zoom out. You can see it doesn't cross the x-axis. That's why it's no solution. I don't have any zeros. It never crosses the x-axis. This way, it wouldn't be a function. If it wasn't a function, you wouldn't be able to type in the calculator. That's one method. You could have also tried to factor it. You can't factor it. It's impossible to factor it because you can't get zeros. Now, quadratic formula. It would be plus 1 plus or minus the square root, negative 1 squared minus, that goes over there, so it's positive 10. 4, 10, 3, I put them out of order. 2 times 3. 1 plus or minus 1 minus 120 square root of negative 119, all over 6. Ding, 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 square root of a negative, can't do it. What's this called right here? Do you remember? What is the inside of that square root called? It's called the discriminant. If the discriminant is greater than 0, you have 2 solutions. That meant you just had a positive number. If it's equal to 0, you have no solution. Or sorry, 1 solution. It's just you have 3 plus or minus 0 all over 2. If it's less than 0, you have no solution. Discriminant is just what's on the inside of that square root. Try this one. 9x squared minus 8 equals 0. All right. There's a couple ways I can try to solve this one. Completing the square really is not going to do anything. I can try to do the quadratic formula. That's too much work. All I know is I can move this over, so I have 9x squared equals 8. Now what do I need to do? If I'm trying to solve for x, divide by 9, x squared equals 8 ninths. What do I need to do? Take the square root. So I take the square root, x equals plus or minus. Can I take the square root of 8? No. Can I take square root of 9? Square root of 8 over 3 is your answer. It's one method, another method that you were taught in Algebra 2. All right, on this one, there's a bunch of different ways to try to solve it. It's choosing which method's the fastest and the most efficient. Yes, I can take and FOIL this out, factor it or distribute it out, then multiply it by 2. You're doing too many steps. Divide by 2. If I divide by 2, x plus 4 squared equals 3. How can I get rid of a square? Square root. X plus 4 equals plus or minus the square root of 3. Subtract the 4, x equals 4 plus or minus square root of 3. Or sorry, negative 4. I lost it. Negative 4 plus or minus the square root of 3. It's a lot more efficient. Those of you who are going to distribute it out, you would have still got the right answer if you did all the steps right. But it can be a lot more confusing. And your problem, instead of taking 3 lines, will take 13 lines. Questions? See, it's too easy to make a mistake in the distributing. Try another one. I can use the quadratic formula. It'll work. I could have tried to complete the square. I'm going to try to factor it. X squared is just x and x. How do I get a 9? 1 and 9. One has to be positive. One has to be negative. Wait a minute. 9, 1. 9's positive. That's negative. My answers are negative 9, positive 1. That's the fastest way. Completing the square would have worked just fine. Okay? X equals 9. All right. Take the 8. Cut it in half. Cut it in half and I get 4. And 4 squared is 16. The 4 goes here. The 16 goes here. Why? Because this actually means this plus 16, this plus 16. Whatever I did to one side, I had to do to the other side. Then when I factor this, I get that. 9 plus 16. 25. Take the square root. What's the square root of 25? So x plus 4 equals plus or minus 5. Subtract over 4. Negative 4 plus or minus 5 gets me 1 or negative 9. Same answers. It's just figuring out which one's the most efficient. Any questions?